Do you ever feel like negotiations are a battlefield? Like no matter how hard you try, you're either stuck in a never-ending back and forth or losing ground when you should be winning. Here's the truth. Most people think negotiating is about clever tricks or flashy tactics. But what if I told you the real secret isn't in the gimmicks? It's in the art of pragmatism. Yes, pragmatism. The simple yet powerful approach that cuts through the noise and gets things done. In this video, I'm going to flip your whole perspective on negotiation and show you why it's not about playing games or outsmarting the other side. It's about making practical, effective choices that lead to real, lasting results. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll have the tools to stop spinning your wheels and start getting what you deserve. No drama, no nonsense. You're not going to want to miss this. Let's dive in. Number 1. The mirror and match maneuver. Let's talk about one of the most powerful, yet almost sneaky tricks you can use in any negotiation. Ready for it? It's called the mirror and match maneuver. Sounds a bit like something out of a spy movie, doesn't it? But trust me, it's not only legal, it's incredibly effective. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds a little manipulative, doesn't it? Yes, I get it. You might feel uncomfortable about the idea of intentionally matching someone's behavior, like you're playing a game. But here's the truth. It's a technique that works because it taps directly into how we, as humans, interact with each other on a subconscious level. And when done with genuine intent, it's not manipulation, it's connection. Now picture this. You're at work trying to negotiate a deadline extension with your boss. You know your request is reasonable, but she's notoriously tough and doesn't like to budge. You can already hear her tone in your head, right? Maybe it's sharp, fast-paced, maybe a little intimidating. You've been there, rushing through your request, stumbling over words, trying to get through it quickly because her energy is just overwhelming. And more often than not, her response is, well, not what you'd hope for. Here's where the magic happens. What if you matched her energy? Not by mimicking her exactly, no need to go full mirror image, but by subtly aligning with her tone, body language, and rhythm. Imagine slowing down just a little to match her pace of speech. Lean in slightly, mirror her posture, and watch how, slowly but surely, you begin to match her subconscious frequency. You know the type. The person who always leans in when they're engaged, or the one who crosses their arms to signal they're thinking deeply. We've all been there, right? Being in a negotiation where the other person's non-verbal cues seem to dominate the conversation. But now, instead of resisting it, you lean in. And guess what happens next? As you mirror and match, the dynamic changes. Suddenly the boss doesn't feel so other. You're not just an employee asking for something. You've shifted into a space of collaboration where you're now speaking the same language, literally and figuratively. Why does this work? Well, human beings are naturally inclined to trust people who are like them. By subtly mimicking her behavior, you've created a sense of comfort and familiarity without ever saying a word. It's almost like you've entered her frame, creating an invisible bridge between you two that makes it harder for her to say no without feeling out of sync. It's as if you're saying, "Hey, I get where you're coming from, and I'm on your side." Here's a real example from my own life. I once had a meeting with a potential client who was giving off serious alpha energy, loud, fast, almost brash. I knew I had to pitch my idea in a way that wouldn't feel like a hard sell. So instead of just sticking to my script, I started matching his cadence. He spoke in sharp bursts, so I responded in a way that mirrored his energy. At first it felt a little weird, like I was copying him, but within minutes the entire conversation shifted. He leaned in, listened more intently, and even agreed to more favorable terms than I expected. What's even more interesting is that, Looking back, I realized that by matching his tone, I had aligned myself with his mindset, creating an unspoken connection that made the negotiation feel more like a friendly discussion than a battle of wills. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about using human psychology to your advantage without being fake. It's about recognizing the importance of non-verbal cues and finding common ground with the other person. Think of it as a way of saying, I understand you, and I'm here, not against you. You don't have to over-explain yourself or beg for approval. You're simply aligning your body and tone with theirs to lower the subconscious barriers and pave the way for a more successful negotiation. This strategy is about reclaiming your power in negotiations. It's about showing up as your best, most grounded self, confident in your ability to navigate the conversation. No more backing down or second-guessing. When you mirror and match, you're telling the world and yourself that you deserve to be heard, respected, and understood. And once you see how effective this maneuver is, you'll wonder why you never tried it sooner. So, the next time you walk into a meeting, remember this. Your peace, your space, and your dignity can be preserved through simple yet powerful actions. Use the mirror and match maneuver. Stand tall, align your energy, and watch how the negotiation transforms before your eyes. Number 2, the silence gambit. Imagine this. You're in a heated conversation, maybe even a full-blown negotiation, and the other person is talking circles around you, throwing demands left and right. You're trying to get a word in, but it feels like you're fighting an uphill battle. The room's energy is intense, and the pressure is mounting. Now, here's the kicker. What if the most powerful move you could make in that moment is nothing at all? Yes, you heard that right. The ultimate strategy in this situation is silence. Now, before you start thinking, that's crazy, I need to defend myself, to fight for what I want, hold that thought. The silence gambit isn't about shutting down or giving up. It's about strategically holding your ground in a way that's almost counterintuitive but incredibly effective. It's like pressing pause on the whole situation, giving yourself space to think, and allowing the other person to fill that silence with more, often revealing information. Trust me on this. Silence can be your secret weapon, and it works wonders when you use it wisely. Let me paint you a picture of how this works in real life. We've all been there, right? You're in a meeting with your boss, and she's presenting all sorts of demands. More deadlines, extra tasks, a never-ending list of things that feel unfair. You start to feel the pressure building. You're on the verge of defending yourself, explaining why it's impossible to meet all her expectations. But then you pause, you stop yourself from jumping into the conversation, and you simply stay silent. For a moment it's awkward, just the sound of your own heartbeat in your ears. But here's the thing, silence doesn't mean weakness. It sends a message that you're not going to fold under pressure. I had a similar experience not too long ago. I was sitting across the table from a client who was asking for more work than I was comfortable with, and he wasn't leaving any room for negotiation. The instinct was there, to fill the silence with explanations, to give him reasons why I couldn't agree to his terms. But I decided to try something different. I leaned back, stayed calm, and let the silence stretch. A minute felt like an eternity. I could practically hear the ticking of the clock. Then, something unexpected happened. He started to get uncomfortable. He cleared his throat. He shifted in his seat. And then, he broke. He started talking, justifying his original offer, giving me more insight into what he actually needed. In that moment, I realized that by staying silent, I gave him space to reconsider, and his next words were more reasonable than his first ones. Here's why this works. Silence has power. In negotiations, when you stop talking, you allow the other person to feel the pressure of the moment. People often feel the need to fill silence with words, and sometimes they end up over-explaining, revealing their true intentions, or even softening their stance. It's like throwing a rock into a pond and watching the ripples grow. Those ripples, they're the things you learn about the situation, the other person's insecurities, and most importantly, where you stand. Now, I know it can be tempting to jump in with an explanation or to defend yourself when things get tense. We've all been there, feeling like if we don't speak up, we'll lose. But silence isn't about giving up. It's about reclaiming control of the situation, about allowing the other party to confront the discomfort of the unknown. It's about maintaining your peace without having to fill the void with unnecessary words or justifications. This strategy is about empowering yourself. It's about recognizing that you don't always need to fill the space with explanations or apologies. Sometimes saying nothing is the most powerful thing you can do. It shows confidence, control, and patience, all traits that demand respect. So next time you're faced with a negotiation or tough conversation, try the silence gambit. Take a step back, breathe, and let the silence speak for you. Remember, your peace, your space, and your dignity are worth more than a quick response or a rushed explanation. The next time you lean into silence, you'll not only reclaim your power, you'll watch the other person give you exactly what you need without you having to say a word. Number 3. The if-then trade. Here's the thing. Negotiation doesn't always have to be a battle of who's louder or who can talk their way into a better deal. Sometimes the most powerful tactic you can use is the if-then trade. Sounds simple, right? But trust me, it's not just a cheap trick. It's a strategic move that can flip the entire conversation in your favor. Now, you might be thinking, that's too obvious. How can a simple if-then do anything? But hear me out. This approach isn't just about making demands. It's about framing the conversation in a way that makes the other party realize the value of what you're offering and what they'll gain if they give a little. We've all been in a situation where we feel like we're asking for too much. Maybe it's with a boss, maybe it's with a client, or even with a friend. You ask for something, and instead of getting the full support you need, you're left with a lukewarm response. You know the type. You put out a request, but instead of a yes or no, you get a long-winded, "let me think about it," or an attempt to push the issue off to another time. We've all been there, right? You feel like you're stuck in limbo, not sure if you're asking for the moon or just a little bit of respect. This is where the if-then trade comes into play. It's about laying out what you need, but attaching it to something specific that the other person can benefit from. You create a situation where it's not just a matter of asking for help. It's about offering a solution to a problem they might not even realize they have. The key is to make sure that what you're asking for is tied to something they want. Think of it like a subtle win-win strategy. You get what you need, and they get something in return. The if-then trade shifts the power dynamic and makes the other person more inclined to make a deal. Here's a real-life example. I was once working on a freelance project with a client who kept pushing the deadlines back, leaving me with very little time to actually finish the work. I knew that if I just accepted it, I'd end up compromising on quality, but I also didn't want to lose the job. Instead of just pleading for more time, I used the if-then trade. I told them, if you can give me an extra week, then I'll make sure the project includes an additional feature that I think will really boost your campaign. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about my need for more time. It was about what they stood to gain by agreeing to my request. The response was almost immediate. They agreed to the extra time without hesitation, and I added that extra feature, which ended up being the highlight of the campaign. The brilliance of the if-then trade is that it's rooted in psychology. People don't like feeling like they're losing out. By offering something in return, you're not just asking for a favor. you're providing a reason for them to say yes. It takes the pressure off you and shifts the focus onto the exchange. It's like putting the ball in their court without actually making them feel cornered. It's clever and it works. Emotionally, this strategy does wonders for your confidence. It takes you out of the position of asking for a favor and puts you in the driver's seat, making you feel like a collaborator rather than a beggar. We all know that feeling of over-explaining ourselves or pleading for what we deserve. But with the if-then trade, you don't have to beg for a yes. Instead, you're offering something tangible that benefits both sides, creating a healthier, more respectful negotiation space. And honestly, it's empowering. You're standing firm, knowing that what you're asking for is not only reasonable, but also beneficial to both parties. The next time you're negotiating, whether it's with a client, a colleague, or even a friend, think of the if-then trade as your go-to tactic. It's simple, it's effective, and it turns any negotiation into a conversation where both sides walk away feeling like winners. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are all intact, and you get exactly what you need. Number 4, the deadline. Dilemma. Here's a little truth bomb for you. Deadlines are the silent killers of productivity. They can make even the most organized person crumble under pressure. Now, you might be thinking, come on, deadlines are just part of the deal, right? It's just the way work goes. But hear me out. What if I told you there's a way to flip that stressful deadline dilemma on its head and actually use it to your advantage? Yes, trust me on this. It's not about fighting the deadline, it's about negotiating with it. We've all been there. You know the type. The clock is ticking, the pressure's mounting, and you're juggling multiple tasks that all have the same deadline. It feels like you're in a race with no finish line, doesn't it? You get that sense of urgency, but instead of feeling motivated, you end up feeling overwhelmed, like the walls are closing in. Maybe you're just one person, and yet you're being asked to deliver the world in a day. Sound familiar? Of course it does. We've all had those moments where the deadline feels like a ticking time bomb ready to explode. But what if deadlines didn't have to be this frantic race to the finish? Instead of letting them control your life, what if you could harness their power to fuel your productivity? The secret lies in creating what I call the deadline dilemma strategy, turning that sense of urgency into your superpower. Here's how it works. When you find yourself staring down the barrel of a looming deadline, don't just panic. Take a step back, break the task into smaller chunks, and give yourself mini deadlines within the big one. This is where the magic happens. The smaller deadlines create a sense of accomplishment every time you hit one, keeping that momentum going and preventing the overwhelm from setting in. I know what you're thinking. Sounds simple enough, but will it really work? Well, let me tell you about a time I had to pull this trick off myself. I had a massive project due, something that required hours of editing, drafting, and research. The deadline was approaching fast, and honestly, I was feeling like I might as well just throw in the towel. But instead of diving into the chaos, I made a plan. I broke down the project into manageable sections, each with its own deadline. Instead of staring down the entire mountain of work, I focused on one chunk at a time, ticking off each mini deadline as I went. And you know what? Not only did I meet the deadline, but I did it with time to spare. The anxiety I initially felt disappeared because I had turned that massive project into smaller, bite-sized wins. It was like the deadline was my teammate, not my enemy. Now, here's the emotional game changer. This strategy isn't just about getting things done, it's about reclaiming your peace of mind. When you're facing a looming deadline, it's easy to feel like you're spiraling out of control, but breaking it down into smaller tasks allows you to regain control and create a sense of progress, which in turn makes you feel more competent and less stressed. You don't have to over-explain yourself, overwork yourself, or back down from what needs to be done. By breaking things down, you're setting yourself up for success and embracing your own power to manage your time and energy. This isn't just about meeting deadlines, it's about protecting your mental space, your confidence, and your sanity. So, the next time you're faced with a deadline that feels like it's going to break you, try this simple but powerful approach. Create your own internal mini deadlines, one step at a time. You'll not only meet the big deadline, but you'll also gain that emotional satisfaction of staying in control, even when the clock is ticking down. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are all within your reach, one mini deadline at a time. Number 5, the highball-lowball play. Have you ever been in a negotiation where you felt like you were either too high or too low, like you couldn't find the right balance? It's a frustrating place to be, right? Now, imagine you could walk into that negotiation with total confidence, knowing exactly how to throw the other party off balance and get what you want. Yes, trust me on this. The trick isn't just in what you ask for, it's in how you ask for it. We've all been there. You know the type. Either you've overestimated your worth and shot for the stars, only to fall flat when the other side balks at your offer, or you've lowballed yourself, feeling desperate to get the deal done, and ended up with much less than you deserved. Maybe you even settled for a middle ground that still didn't feel great, thinking, well, it's better than nothing. But here's the kicker. What if you didn't have to settle at all? What if you could strategically manage both the high and the low to come out on top? Here's the play, the highball-lowball play. It's a simple yet powerful negotiation strategy where you start by asking for something high, way higher than you expect to get. Now, I know what you're thinking, but isn't that a bit too bold? What if I look unreasonable? Stick with me. The idea here is to anchor the conversation to a point that feels extreme, so extreme that it forces the other party to counter with something more reasonable. This high offer gives you leverage. But here's where the twist happens. Right after your highball, you lower your offer, but not by much. The drop isn't as dramatic as you might think. It's just enough to seem like you're compromising, but still within the range of what you really want. Now, you might be wondering how this actually plays out in real life. Let me tell you about a time I had to use this tactic in a freelance project negotiation. I was hired for a project, but the client was trying to negotiate my rates down, offering much less than what I knew I deserved. Instead of immediately agreeing, I hit them with a number that was 30% higher than what I actually wanted. The client hesitated, and just when I saw them preparing to backpedal, I quickly lowered my offer, but only by about 10%. I didn't give in too much. And guess what? They jumped at the lower offer, thinking they'd gotten a deal, and I still ended up with a number that was higher than my initial ask. It felt like a win-win, and they left thinking I was flexible, while I walked away, knowing I had negotiated my worth. This strategy does wonders for your emotional and mental peace too. Think about it. When you walk into a negotiation knowing exactly how to play your cards, you're not just securing a better deal, you're reclaiming your confidence and setting boundaries. Instead of shrinking back, over-explaining, or giving in out of fear of losing the deal, you stand tall, knowing the power lies in your ability to control the conversation. You're not just fighting for what's fair, you're asserting your worth with strategic finesse. So, the next time you're facing a negotiation, whether it's with a client, boss, or even a friend, remember this. Start with the high ball to set the tone, and then lower your ask just enough to appear reasonable while still getting what you deserve. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are all in your hands, and with this play, you'll never have to back down again. Number 6, the what if. Pivot. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where things just aren't going as planned? You're stuck in a conversation, a project, or even a relationship, and no matter how hard you try, you just can't seem to break through. I've been there too, and it's frustrating. You might be thinking, I've tried everything. What else is there? Here's the thing. What if the key to getting unstuck isn't about pushing harder, but about pivoting to a completely different perspective? We've all been there. You know the type, the conversations where you're saying the same thing over and over, the meetings where no matter how many times you explain it, it's just not clicking, or the project where no matter how much effort you put in, the results feel like you're running in circles. It's like you're giving it your all, but it's just not getting you anywhere. And here's the kicker. What if you've been playing the wrong game the whole time? This is where the what-if pivot comes in. Imagine, instead of doubling down on what's not working, you ask yourself, what if I tried something completely different? What if the solution isn't what I thought it was? By framing your challenges as what-ifs, you unlock a powerful mental shift that encourages creative thinking and lets you explore new approaches. It's like stepping out of a maze and looking at it from above, instead of just banging your head against the walls trying to find a way out. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds a little abstract, doesn't it? Hear me out. The what-if pivot isn't about abandoning your goals. It's about approaching them in a way that opens up more possibilities. Let me tell you about a time when this approach worked wonders. A few months ago, I was working on a video project with a client who just wasn't happy with the direction I was taking. I tried tweaking the edits, changing the pacing, and adding different effects, but nothing seemed to hit the mark. Instead of getting frustrated and diving deeper into the same edits, I took a step back and asked myself, what if I took the project in a completely different direction? What if the tone wasn't the issue, but the way I was communicating the idea? After a bit of brainstorming, I realized the key wasn't about making the edits more polished, but about making the messaging clearer and more engaging. I shifted the focus, reworked the script, and suddenly everything clicked. The client loved it, and the project was a success. What's powerful about this is that it's not just a strategy for work. It's about mental flexibility. When you use the what-if pivot, you're giving yourself permission to explore other possibilities, and that's a huge emotional win. It's a mindset that breaks you free from the cycle of frustration and self-doubt. Instead of wondering why something isn't working, you start looking for solutions. It's about reclaiming your mental space, finding clarity, and regaining control of the situation. So, next time you're stuck, don't just push harder. Pivot. The breakthrough could be waiting just around the corner in a direction you hadn't thought of yet. So, remember this, the what-if pivot isn't just a strategy. It's a way of thinking, of reclaiming your confidence, your creativity, and your sense of possibility. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are all found when you give yourself the freedom to step outside the box and ask, what if? Number 7. The walkaway bluff. Have you ever found yourself stuck in a conversation, negotiation, or situation where you feel like you're giving everything, but the other side just doesn't seem to care? It's like you're talking to a brick wall, and no matter how many points you make or how clear you are, the outcome doesn't change. You might be thinking, why am I even still here? Well, what if I told you that the solution isn't to keep pushing or explaining, but to simply walk away? Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds a little dramatic, doesn't it? But trust me, it's not about being passive-aggressive or making a scene. It's about knowing your worth and drawing a boundary. You see, the walkaway bluff is a powerful strategy in any situation where you feel your value or time is being undervalued. It's about asserting yourself without raising your voice, without fighting, but with the ultimate trump card, your willingness to leave. We've all been there. You know the type. When you're stuck in a meeting where your input feels ignored, or you're negotiating a deal and the other side is pushing you too far. It's frustrating, isn't it? You start questioning if they even respect your opinion or time. So what do? We keep talking, we keep defending ourselves, and before we know it, we're spinning our wheels. But here's the secret. The moment you realize you're not being heard or respected, you have one move left that can change everything: the walk-away bluff. What does this look like? Picture this. I once found myself in a lengthy negotiation where my ideas and offers were being brushed off, and I could feel myself getting frustrated. I kept pushing, trying to make my point clearer, but nothing worked. Finally, I leaned back, gave a calm smile and said, "Well, I think that's about it from my side. Let me know if things change." And then, wait for it, I stood up and walked out. I didn't slam the door, didn't shout, just left. 10 minutes later, I got a call. They'd reconsidered and agreed to the terms. It was a total shift. The act of walking away signaled that I wasn't desperate, that my time and perspective mattered. Here's why it works. The walk-away bluff taps into something deep: self-respect and boundaries. It tells the other person that you have options, that you're not dependent on them, and that you're willing to move on if things aren't working. This isn't about playing games. It's about reclaiming your power and dignity. And emotionally, it's a game changer. Instead of feeling like you're begging or explaining yourself over and over, you're asserting that your time, your ideas, and your peace are non-negotiable. So, next time you feel yourself getting stuck in a situation that's draining you, try this. Instead of pushing harder or over-explaining, simply stand your ground, give a calm exit line, and walk away. It's not about winning the battle in that moment. It's about showing that your self-worth is not tied to anyone else's approval. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are far too valuable to be surrendered. And in that moment, you'll realize that you've just walked into a new level of strength and self-respect. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helped you see negotiation in a whole new light and gave you some valuable insights that you can start using right away. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button. It really helps out. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more content like this on mastering practical strategies and real-world skills. And hey, if you know someone who could benefit from these negotiation tips, share this video with them. You never know who might need a little boost in their approach. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Drop a comment below and share your personal experiences with negotiation. How do you approach tough talks, and what's worked or hasn't worked for you? Let's build a community of sharers and doers here. Remember, negotiating isn't about outwitting others. It's about finding solutions that make sense for everyone involved. Keep that in mind, and you'll find yourself in control of every conversation, big or small. Until next time, stay empowered and keep mastering the art of pragmatism.